People talk about eating too much or too much calories. Now, that's always a possibility, but the problem is when you're consuming good fats and good proteins and your blood sugar is not on a roller coaster ride and the food's nutrient dense that you're eating, the odds of overeating gets lower because of the fact, one, you have nutritional density. Two, protein and fat signals a lot of satiating compounds in the brain. Adiponectin, peptide YY, it's going to stimulate cholecystokinin. A lot of these things are going to help you feel satiated and help you feel full. So it's harder to overeat fats and proteins. I mean, is it possible? If you're just doing scoops and scoops of almond butter or straight up butter, it's possible. But if you're eating at a normal pace and you're eating, vegetables and protein sources and good fats together, and you're not chowing things down super fast, I recommend eating till you're about 80% full, and then kind of giving yourself 5 or 10 minutes to kind of let things digest. Because sometimes there can be a delay in that satiation signal. And that kind of helps your body be like, okay, yeah, I'm good. You actually had enough. You just got to give yourself that, eat till you're 80%, not till you're 100%, and give it that 5 or 10 minutes to kind of get that feedback loop back up to the brain and be like, yeah, I'm satiated. I'm good. So that's kind of my big strategy on the calorie side. And then of course, eat the right foods. When you do too much carbohydrate, you don't get the satiating signal that you get with fats and proteins. That's why the Pringles commercials of the 90s, everyone knows it. If you're that old, once you pop, you don't stop, right? Or everyone has the experience of buying a pizza and eating it, in back in their college days to their whole face, right? They eat the whole thing. Why?
Well,
Because you don't
Lay's.
quite get, the Lay's chips. You don't get that satiation signal, or it comes way late in the game. And that's why you can overeat carbohydrates. It's much harder to overeat, let's say, a dozen eggs, right? You'd be nauseous because of all of those compounds, CCK, et cetera, that would make you feel really nauseous.
You know what we ought to do? We ought to do one of those uh, reacts video where you'll see like health practitioners react to certain videos. You and I need to pull up like a bunch of commercials from the 80s and 90s and just share our thoughts on them, because it's really sickening if you think about it. Like the Lay's motto, wasn't it? I bet you can't eat just one. It's like,
Yep.
well, duh, because you're getting no satiation, you're getting no leptin response from that nutrient devoid food with hydrogenated cottonseed oil on it.
And they're also putting a lot of stuff in there to stimulate appetite. They're putting more things to stimulate it, right? They're
Yep.
using a lot of sodium in there. They're putting a lot of MSG and flavor enhancers. And then don't even get me started with the low fat phase. They started adding in the Olestra. And the Olestra was a fat, but it was undigestible. So you'd get disaster pants after you consume it because your body couldn't break it down. So you'd have the fat, you taste the fat, but then it would go out your pants. It was pretty disgusting.
That's
You remember
terrible.
that stuff, the Olestra in the late
Yeah.
90s?
Yeah. It's absolutely horrid. I can't believe what Americans have gone through in terms of the food supply. If you were someone who lived in a rural area, maybe you bought your food from farmers back then and you kind of avoided supermarkets, maybe you dodged a lot of this. But unfortunately, a lot of people are victims to what's happened with the food supply. So this is just more reason to connect with your farmer, buy your food locally. It's going to have better soil density of nutrients. Hopefully, you're going to have less transit time. So therefore, you're not eating blueberries from Mexico that were picked way too early and they didn't develop and
The
were not
nutrients.
picked at the peak. So there's a lot of benefits to going local with your food supply. I could go on a whole rant about that, but regarding the satiety hormone stuff with the foods, it's huge. I mean, and so that message, the 80% full thing, goes to all those people. And this was me. I'm going to admit it. This was me. Even though it was like a grain-free cookie, almond flour or something with coconut sugar, I would eat a meal and I'd be like, I'm not satiated enough. I need to have something sweet. And it's like I wasn't getting that full signal. And once I've detoxed mold, I don't have that anymore. And if I just sit there at the table for a couple extra minutes, all of a sudden, oh, you know what? I am full. I don't need anything else. And we have that report all the time from people like, oh man, I got to go run and get my piece of chocolate after the meal. If that's you, then there's something not right. That's not, now it's a common response, but common doesn't mean normal. So if you eat a grass-fed steak, a baked sweet
Hmm.
potato, butter and cinnamon, and a big old fat plate of some butter with broccoli, and you don't feel good after that, and you're still running for the cookie or the chocolate, investigate, because there's something going on.